Hi, it's Elise Pickett with the Urban Harvest, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can gain a little bit of control and self-sufficiency in your life by using a modern day victory garden. There is a heck of a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and it's difficult to feel in control when things change so quickly. But I wanted to share what I have learned about gardening and how you can start your own garden, your own victory garden, even in an urban setting with little or no knowledge. Homesteading and permaculture are terms that are mentioned more frequently now than they have in the past, and they're wonderful approaches to becoming a little bit more self-sufficient in small spaces, urban settings, or just in our industrial food system as a whole. And I think that there are modern day takes on that where we don't necessarily have to be full-time farmers, but we can still grow a little bit of our own food. If you're unfamiliar about the term victory garden, it was started by the Department of Agriculture in World War II. And at that time, there were a lot of food shortages and a lot of people in the workforce that were not able to grow like they used to. The farmers were overseas, etc. And so the Department of Agriculture asked or encouraged that families and communities start to do their part and grow a little bit of their own food. And at that time they had, around 1943 it was, they had over 20 million victory gardens in the United States, which is pretty amazing. At that time, they were able to grow about 40% of their own food on these victory gardens. So forget about industrial ag, forget about full-time farmers. They were able to grow 40% of the food that our country needed with just these victory gardens alone. These people did not have formal education. They had not been doing it their whole lives, but they decided that it was time to do their part and to start trying. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, is how we can create modern day victory gardens to bring a little self-sufficiency to our lives and to our families without a ton of experience. So how do you get this victory garden started? And I want to say, just start. There's never going to be a perfect time. You're never going to know everything, and that's okay. Part of gardening, part of homesteading, part of permaculture is trial and error. And I like to take the ready, fire, aim approach. So you're never going to get it right the first time. So if you just start dabbling, start trying things, you're going to have some successes and you're going to have some failures. And as long as you know that going in, it's okay. I think that we have a common misconception that you have to have a huge amount of knowledge to get started or to do things perfect the first time. And I will just say that my first garden actually ended up being fairly successful. I think maybe beginner's luck, but I tweaked things as I learned and grew. And now I'm to the point of being a little bit more efficient with my garden plans and the production from my garden, but I was still getting harvests from that very first garden that I grew in a very small space. I've grown in an urban setting the entire time, and as you can see here, my space at my new house that I'm still developing is my front yard. So whether you're living in an apartment and you have a windowsill or a balcony, or whether you live in the suburbs and you have a yard that you could utilize, or maybe even if you're a little more rural and have some acreage to work with. There's no right or wrong place, and there's no right or wrong time. Just start. There are 3 things that you need to get started growing a garden, and that is sun, soil, and seed. The 3 S's: sun, soil, and seed. If you're growing in Florida, we do not go by the standard 8 hours of sunlight a day for a vegetable garden. We're closer to 4 to 6 hours of sunlight a day. So most people do have that amount of sunlight somewhere in their yard. It just takes a little bit of observation to find it. I do have a video that goes in depth on the nuances of sun in your garden. So if you want to find out more about that, click the link above, and that will take you to an in-depth video on sun. As for soil, that is an absolutely critical component to vegetable gardening, especially with a sustainable or self-sufficient mindset. It all starts with the soil. I have a plethora of videos on composting, filling raised beds, and how to amend your soil to get the most out of it. I will say that you don't need a fancy garden box to get started, but you should spend the time on building quality soil. So if you want to learn more about that, click the link above. You don't need a ton of money or a lot of resources to get a garden started. These beds here were salvaged construction materials that I picked up for free, but you don't even technically need a container. You can also just grow in mounded rows on top of a mulch pile or on top of cardboard so that it's a little bit of a weed barrier. There's a lot of options that are very low tech, very minimal cost to get started growing vegetables. So don't let that be a limitation for you. As for seed, I really strongly prefer starting from seed whenever possible. 1, it greatly reduces the costs involved with starting your garden. 2, you're able to succession plant so that you can extend your season. And 3, you have a much wider selection of varieties when you choose to start from seed versus starts. I have a lot of videos that go in depth on all 3 of those topics. So make sure to click above or go down to the show notes where I'll have the links for all of those videos for you to learn more. But if you can remember, check your sun, build your soil, and source your seed, you will be good to go. Now, everywhere is different. South Florida, Central Florida, North Florida, or anywhere else in the country. We have seasons, and different plants do better in different environments. So make sure to find someone who is local to you or as close to local as possible, and ask them. If they've been gardening a while and there's a neighbor in your area that you've noticed has vegetable gardens, go strike up a conversation. If there's online resources that are located in your growing zone or growing area, reach out to them. That's what they're there for. You can also check your county extension office, your universities. Knowing your seasons is really important. And a lot of people think that coming into summer, you can't grow food here in Florida, especially vegetables, and that is not the case. There are a ton of crops that you can be planting. So make sure to reach out to those resources who are as close to you as possible and figure out what to start growing. Selecting seed varieties that do exceptionally well in your climate is a really important component to being successful in your victory garden. So do a little research, check in with those neighbors, the extension office, or a locally available gardening resource to you to really hone in on which variety of tomatoes grow best in Florida, or what variety of leafy greens that you can grow, because you can grow leafy greens year-round here in Florida. I do have a seed club that sends out 3 varieties of in-season seed shipped to your door. All come with a seed success card. So it tells you tips for planting, for maintaining it, for harvesting, different cooking ideas, all sorts of good things. And they're always in season and selected for the climate. If you want to find out more about the Florida Vegetable Seed Club, go ahead and head down to the show notes. I have over 50 videos here on my YouTube channel that cover a variety of concepts, starting from seed, leafy greens that grow well here in Florida, different raised beds and pros and cons of that, a huge amount of resources. And if you do have any questions, make sure to leave me a comment below and I will do my very best to reach out and answer those questions. This recent turmoil that we've all been experiencing can put a lot of fear into people, but I like to flip it and say that there is a lot of hope. Our industrial food system has been struggling for a very long time, and maybe this is something that can help us wake up and realize that we have control and self-sufficiency in our food system. We can be resilient if we choose to grow some of our own food. Any food that you grow for your family is going to be more nutrient dense than you could possibly purchase at the grocery store. So do yourself and your family a favor and choose to grow a victory garden today. There's no better time to start. You don't have to run out there and start homesteading from the get-go or create a food forest permaculture garden out of your entire backyard. But there's nothing wrong with growing a little bit of your own food. It can be that little pot sitting on a windowsill, a planter on the side of your house, or your entire front yard converted into a vegetable garden. Just remember the 3 S's: sun, soil, and seed. Pick a place and just get started. When victory gardens were in their prime, they were able to grow 9 to 10 million tons of food. And these were by completely average people. They were not trained professionals. They were not career farmers. They were average citizens living in urban and suburban settings or in more rural settings, but not as full-time farmers. So we've never been more connected and had more information at our fingertips than right now, today. So let's regain a little bit of self-sufficiency in our food system and take the time or make the choice to choose to grow some of your own food in our modern day victory gardens. If you liked this video or found it helpful, make sure to head on down and give me a thumbs up. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button so you're alerted every time a new video comes out on Florida-based vegetable gardening. Now it's time to get growing.